Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I was already living like the world had ended. Not because I wanted to cosplay some rugged fantasy, but because I'd spent enough years teaching other people how fast normal life can vanish to know it doesn't come with a countdown timer. When I left the training circuit, I bought a small place up in northern Vermont. Close enough to Canada that your phone sometimes tried to roam, far enough from the interstate that you didn't get the weekend crowd. The house was a plain, drafty mid-century box with a metal roof and a view of dark spruce. I had a wood stove, a well, a small solar array that would keep my freezer cold if the sky stayed kind, and a shed full of the kind of practical tools nobody thinks about until they need them. My name is Mason Rourke. I'm 42. I did a hitch in the Army, then spent years as a survival instructor and contractor. I taught cold weather movement, navigation, improvised shelter, basic trauma care, and what I always called boring logistics, the stuff that keeps you alive when the heroics stop. In the last few years, my students were mostly law enforcement units and private security teams, the kind that needed to operate outdoors at night without making a mess of themselves. I didn't drink much. I didn't talk to many people. I did my grocery runs in St. Albans, paid cash when I could, and kept my schedule simple. If a storm came, I already had lanterns and a full tank of propane for the camp stove. If the power went out, I didn't panic. When the collapse began, that calm made me dangerous in a way I didn't fully understand yet. It started on a Tuesday in late October, with a story on the local radio station that didn't match the tone of the announcer's voice. They were talking about a medical incident at a hospital in Montreal. A patient had attacked staff. The police were involved. There were rumors online, the announcer said, but they urged everyone to rely on official sources. They talked about it the way people talk about a fire 2 towns over. Unfortunate, distant, not really yours. I remember it because I was splitting wood when I heard it. The sound of the maul hitting the round was clean and satisfying. The air smelled like wet leaves. It had rained overnight, and the mud was thick enough that every step made a suction sound. I paused with the handle in my hands and listened. Then I went back to work. That was my first mistake, assuming distance meant safety. Over the next 48 hours, the radio got weird. Not dramatic, not panicked, just wrong. The announcers started repeating phrases. They kept saying isolated incident and out of an abundance of caution, like those words could build walls. Another report came in from Burlington, then Plattsburgh. A violent disturbance. A mass casualty event. Then the state police scanner chatter, which I could sometimes pick up if I tuned my handheld radio just right, turned into a mess of overlapping voices and clipped codes. I understood the pattern before anyone on television dared to say it out loud. When a story is truly bad, official language tries to shrink it. If you keep the word small, maybe the problem stays small too. By Thursday morning, the first videos started circulating. I saw them because my neighbor, a man named Colin who did snow plowing in winter and odd jobs the rest of the year, banged on my door like it was on fire. He was pale and shaking, holding his phone out like it was a grenade. "Look," he said, and his voice was too high. "Tell me what this is." I didn't want to look. That's another truth people don't say. Sometimes your survival instincts aren't about action, they're about denial. The brain tries to protect you by telling you the worst thing isn't real. But I took the phone. The video was shaky, shot through a windshield. A downtown street, people running, someone screaming, and then a man in a hospital gown moving in the wrong way, fast, jerky, like his joints didn't care about pain. He hit a woman from behind and dragged her down, The camera swerved. There was a sound like someone hitting a car with a bat. I watched 10 seconds. That was enough. Colin's eyes were desperate. "It's fake, right?" I handed the phone back. "I don't know," I said, because I wasn't going to lie to make him feel better. That day, I did what I always told people to do when something feels wrong. I moved from curiosity to preparation. I filled my bathtub with water. I topped off every container I owned. I checked my generator even though I hadn't run it in weeks. I made a written list of what I had and what I needed. I turned on my radio and left it on low, like the background noise could keep my brain from spiraling. I also did something else. I grabbed a paper road atlas from the shelf. Because when things go bad, screens become traps. A map doesn't run out of battery. It doesn't lie to you because an algorithm thinks it knows better. The border was a thick black line on the page. I'd always treated it like an idea more than a physical thing. Trees don't stop at the 45th parallel. Deer don't carry passports. But people do, and governments do, and those lines become real when panic hits. By Friday, the borderline might as well have been a fuse. The governor came on TV in the afternoon and said there was no cause for alarm. He used those exact words. Then, in the next sentence, he said the state was activating the National Guard to assist with public safety operations and infrastructure protection. That night, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security announced restrictions on border crossings. Canada mirrored it. The language was careful. Essential travel only. Increased screening. Temporary measures. Temporary is a word that has killed more people than bullets. Temporary makes you wait. Temporary makes you think you can ride it out in place. Saturday morning, I drove to the nearest secondary crossing. Not because I wanted to leave, because I wanted to see. There's a main crossing not far away, the one most people use, with big lanes and overhead lights and a steady stream of cars. That one was going to be chaos, and chaos is where you get killed. I wasn't interested in chaos. I headed instead for a quiet stretch of road where an old inspection station sat like a forgotten tooth in the gums of the forest. Years ago, the government had processed a trickle of vehicles there. Then budgets shifted, traffic patterns changed, and the station got shuttered. Officially, the crossing was closed. Unofficially, locals still used the area like a landmark, a place you pointed to when you said, "Past the old station, take the left." I'd driven by it in summer, curious. White painted building, peeling a little. An empty canopy where cars used to pull up for inspection. A few outbuildings behind it. A fenced sally port that led to holding rooms. Old security cameras, some missing, some still there like blind eyes. It was the kind of place that made my brain catalog it automatically. Shelter, choke points, sight lines, power supply, water access, perimeter control. When I rolled up that Saturday, I knew instantly that other people had the same instinct. 2 cars were parked at the edge of the lot, engines off, occupants sitting inside like they were waiting for a sign. A third vehicle, a white cargo van, was pulled under the canopy like it belonged there. The station itself looked dead. But the forest didn't sound normal. The birds were too quiet. I stopped my truck on the road and watched without getting out. That's a habit you pick up when you've spent years teaching people not to walk into problems. You observe first, you decide second. The van's side door slid open. A man stepped out. He wore a dark hoodie and had the posture of someone who thinks he can handle violence because he's done it before. He looked at the building, then at the road, then back at the building. He did a quick scan like he was checking for witnesses. Then a second man got out. And a third. They didn't look like tourists. They looked like men who move things across borders when borders are supposed to be invisible. Smugglers, couriers, whatever word you want to use. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I didn't need to be a cop to know what that meant. If even the quiet places were drawing predators, the main routes were already a war zone. I backed up slowly and turned around, keeping the truck smooth so it didn't look like panic. In my mirror, I saw one of the men glance my way. He didn't chase. He just watched. That told me he wasn't afraid. That told me he had options. When I got home, I locked my doors, checked my window latches, and put a full magazine into my rifle without telling myself stories about how I wouldn't need it. I own guns because I live in rural America, and because I spent enough time training people to know that a tool is only as dangerous as the person holding it. I also own them because there are predators in the world who only understand consequences. But I don't think of firearms as magic. They don't solve problems. They create louder, faster ones. The rifle was a simple, common, legally owned semi-automatic, set up for practical use. A sling, a small light, a sight I could use in low light without fumbling. Nothing fancy, nothing that made me feel like an action movie. I laid it on the table and looked at it for a long moment, like it was an argument I didn't want to have. By noon, the first text message alerts came in. Not from the government, from people. Colin. They shut the bridge. People fighting at the gas station in town. A woman I knew from the hardware store, Tessa, a paramedic who lived 2 roads over, ER full. We're told not to come in unless called. Something is wrong. Another number I didn't recognize. Are you Mason? Heard you know wilderness. Need help. I didn't reply to the unknown number. I hated myself a little for it. Then I reminded myself that in disasters, kindness can get you killed. At 3 in the afternoon, the power flickered. At 3:07, it went out completely. The house went silent in that way that makes you realize how much electricity is always humming in your life. Fans, transformers, chargers. The refrigerator stopped. The baseboard heater clicked off. The radio's little light died. I stood there listening. In the distance, a dog barked, then stopped abruptly. I walked to the window and looked toward the road. No cars, no movement, just trees and gray sky. Then, faintly, from somewhere far off, I heard a sound like metal hitting metal. Dull. Repeated. It carried on the air like a warning. I didn't wait to see if the power would come back. I started my generator outside, keeping the exhaust pointed away from the house. I didn't hook it to the whole house. I ran a heavy-duty extension to my freezer, another to a small battery charger station. The solar would help in daytime, but October in Vermont is not generous. When I switched on my handheld radio, scanning frequencies, the air was crowded with voices. Some were official, some were not. There were reports of infected individuals in St. Albans. There were reports of a riot in Swanton. There were reports of a vehicle collision at an intersection that had turned into a pileup because nobody knew how to behave when rules dissolved. I heard one phrase repeated by different voices on different channels. They don't respond. Not to commands. Not to pain. Not to reason. There it was. The thing everybody tries not to say because it sounds like fiction until it is standing in your driveway. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair by the window with the lights off, watching my own property like it belonged to someone else. Every rustle outside made my body tighten. Every distant sound made my brain draw maps. At around 2 in the morning, headlights cut across the trees. A vehicle slowed as it approached my driveway, then continued without turning in. I saw the silhouette of a person in the passenger seat turn their head and look at my house. They were hunting, not animals, people. I waited until the lights were gone. Then I made a decision. My house was defensible in the way most rural houses are defensible. It had walls, locks, and distance. But it was also isolated, and isolation works both ways. If something went wrong, no one would hear me. If I needed to move quickly, I had one road out, and that road could be blocked. There was another place, ugly, bureaucratic, designed for control, that I'd already been thinking about. The closed border inspection station. It was built to process people and cargo. It had holding cells. It had barriers. It had surveillance blind spots because old systems are never perfect. It had rooms full of paperwork that could tell me things I didn't know yet. It had radios and wiring runs. It had an elevated perspective with the canopy and the lanes. It also had something my house didn't. It was already a landmark for people desperate enough to move. It was both a threat and an opportunity. I packed at first light, not like I was going camping, like I was leaving my life behind. Water containers, medical kit, food that didn't require cooking, a sleeping bag rated for freezing nights, tools, crowbar, bolt cutters, duct tape, zip ties, headlamp, spare batteries, a small hand crank radio, my paper maps, my handgun in a holster, my rifle in a case, a chest rig with spare magazines. Not because I wanted a fight, but because if a fight came, I didn't want to be counting rounds with shaking hands. I also grabbed something that felt ridiculous until I put it in the bag, a roll of fluorescent surveyor tape and a thick marker. In training, you learn that marking and signaling can keep you alive. In chaos, people repeat mistakes because there's no information. Tape and a marker are information. Before I left, I wrote a note and taped it inside my front window facing the road. If you need help, go to the old inspection station on Route 235. I didn't sign it, I didn't add details, I didn't promise anything. I just pointed toward the only plan I had. The drive to the station took 20 minutes, but the world changed in that short distance. I passed a sedan half in a ditch, driver's door open, engine still running. No one inside. I passed a mailbox smashed flat. I passed a deer standing in the road staring at nothing, then bolting into the trees when my truck rolled close. Near an intersection, I saw a group of people walking. 5, maybe 6, carrying backpacks, moving fast, heads down. One of them waved at me like they expected rescue. I didn't stop. That decision tasted like pennies in my mouth. I kept going. When the old inspection station came into view, my stomach tightened. The lot was no longer empty. It looked like a refugee camp built by amateurs. Cars parked at odd angles. A pickup with a trailer. 2 vans. A motorcycle tipped over on its side near the fence. People clustered under the canopy as if the faded government structure could protect them from the sky. And there were voices. Too many voices. I slowed on the approach road, scanning. I saw a woman with a baby on her hip. I saw a man in a business shirt holding a golf club like a weapon. I saw 2 teenagers with backpacks staring at the building as if they expected it to start talking. I also saw the smugglers. The 3 men from yesterday, moving through the crowd like they owned it. One of them had a baseball bat. Another had a handgun tucked into his waistband, visible on purpose. Predators always want you to see the teeth. I pulled my truck off to the side where I could back out if I needed to. I sat with the engine running, window down an inch, listening. The crowd was arguing. Not screaming yet, but close. Someone was saying the building had supplies. Someone else was saying the doors were locked. Someone said the guards had abandoned it and left everything behind. A man shouted, "We can't go back. The main crossing is closed. They were shooting in the lanes." Another voice, female, sharp, said, "No one was shooting. Stop saying that. People got hurt because you ran." A child started crying. And underneath it all, like a low frequency you feel more than hear, there was fear. I watched the smugglers step under the canopy and push toward the main entrance. One of them shouldered through a man who protested. The man stumbled and almost fell. Nobody helped him. That was the moment I knew what would happen if I did nothing. The inspection station would become a trap. The strong would take it. The weak would get cornered. The noise would draw the infected, and the building would turn into a slaughterhouse. Slow, panicked, messy. I didn't want to intervene. That's the ugly truth. My instinct was to fade into the trees, circle around, and find a quieter place to survive. Invisibility is a powerful tool. But I'd spent years telling other people that the point of skills isn't to outlive everyone. It's to keep people alive long enough for society to rebuild. I turned off my engine. I stepped out of the truck, leaving the door open so I could dive back in if needed. I didn't carry the rifle. That would escalate instantly. I carried the handgun concealed under my jacket and kept my hands visible. I walked toward the canopy at a steady pace like I belonged there. A few people looked at me. Some recognized me. Rural areas are like that. You see the same faces at the feed store, the same trucks at the gas station. Tessa, the paramedic, was there, and the sight of her made my brain click into focus. She stood near a concrete barrier, hair pulled back tight, her uniform jacket dirty. She looked exhausted. There was dried something on her sleeve I didn't want to identify. When she saw me, her face changed, relief and anger at the same time. "Mason," she said, and her voice cracked. "Thank God," or whatever. "What's happening?" I asked. She gave a short laugh that wasn't humor. "Everything. People started showing up when they closed the border. Some were trying to get to family in Canada. Some were trying to get out of the cities. Some, I don't know. They heard border and thought safety. And the building? Locked," she said. "Those guys," her chin jerked toward the smugglers. "They've been trying doors. They're talking about breaking windows. I told them not to. They told me to mind my own business." A shout went up near the entrance as the smugglers leaned into the main door. It held. The tallest one, the hoodie guy, turned and scanned the crowd. His eyes were flat. He saw me and held my gaze for a second too long. He was measuring me. I walked closer, stopping far enough away that it didn't look like a challenge. "Hey," I called, keeping my tone calm. "Doors are reinforced. You start breaking glass, you're going to cut people and invite trouble." Hoodie guy smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Invite trouble? Trouble's here, old man." "I'm not old," I said, "and I'm not your problem unless you make me one." The crowd hushed slightly. People love a confrontation because it distracts them from helplessness. Hoodie guy stepped forward. "Who are you?" "Someone who's not interested in watching this turn into a stampede," I said. He glanced around at the building. "You got a key?" "No," I said. "But I know how these places are built. There's a maintenance access. There's a power room. There's a fence gate. This isn't a bunker. It's an office with locks." His friend with the bat spat on the ground. "So open it." "I will," I said, "but not for you to run it like a prison yard." Hoodie guy took another step. I could smell his breath from here. Stale coffee and cigarettes. "You think you run anything?" "I think the building will kill all of us if we act stupid," I said, and kept my voice low. "You want a warm room and walls? Then we do this right." He stared at me, then looked past me at the crowd. He saw what I saw. People were listening. People wanted someone to follow. They didn't care who, as long as the person sounded certain. He lifted his hand slightly, a mock surrender. "All right," he said. "Do it right." "Good," I said. "First rule, nobody goes inside until we clear it. Second rule, if anyone is infected, they don't come inside. Third rule, we keep noise down. This place is a funnel. Anything that hears us will come." A murmur rippled through the group. People flinched at the word infected. They'd been avoiding it, calling them sick, calling them crazy, calling them attackers. Infected made it real. Tessa moved closer to me. "You can clear it?" she asked quietly. "I can try," I said. I looked at the building like it was a puzzle. The main entrance was locked, side doors likely alarmed once, maybe dead now. Windows were narrow but breakable. Behind the station, there was usually a sally port for secondary inspection, an enclosed area where they could hold a vehicle. There would be a staff entrance near the back with a keypad, maybe. I walked along the building's front, keeping my pace steady. The canopy overhead made the light flat and gray. Old cameras watched from corners, but their lenses were dulled with years of weather. Some were missing entirely. I found a door labeled mechanical near an outbuilding. The handle didn't budge. I crouched and checked the hinges. The screws were exposed. That meant someone had installed it without thinking about a person like me. Bolt cutters wouldn't help here, but a screwdriver might. I went back to my truck, grabbed a compact toolkit, and returned. As I knelt, I felt eyes on my back. The smugglers were close enough that if I made a mistake, they'd take advantage. I worked slowly, forcing my hands not to shake. I backed out the hinge screws one by one. The metal was cold, the heads were slightly stripped from age. It took longer than I wanted. When the last screw came free, I eased the door outward. It creaked, loud as a gunshot in the hush. Everyone froze. I held still, listening. No alarm, no movement inside, just the smell of old dust and stale paper. I pushed the door wider and aimed my flashlight into the dark. The beam picked out pipes, a metal cabinet, a tangle of conduits. No people. I stepped inside and let the door swing mostly closed behind me, leaving a crack. I didn't want the crowd to rush. The mechanical room led to a narrow corridor. Government buildings are built like mazes, control points, internal doors, places you can lock down sections. I moved like I was back on training lanes. Check corners. Listen. Breathe. There were signs of abandonment. Empty coffee cups, a calendar on the wall from 2 years ago, a stack of forms on a desk collecting dust. There were also signs someone had been here recently, a scuffed footprint in the dust, a small wrapper on the floor. My stomach tightened again. The building wasn't empty. I eased down the corridor, following it toward the main processing area. The air was colder inside, and it smelled faintly like cleaning chemicals. The fluorescent lights were off. Without power, the building felt like a tomb. I reached a doorway with a window and peered through. The main lobby was a large room with counters, inspection booths, and rows of plastic chairs bolted to the floor. The counters were covered in old signs about declaring goods and showing identification. There was a glassed-in office to one side. Beyond that, a hallway led deeper, likely to holding rooms, interview rooms, and secondary inspection. And in the lobby, crouched behind a counter, was a man. He wasn't infected, at least not from what I could see. He was holding a pistol in both hands, pointed at the door I was looking through. His eyes were wide and bloodshot. He whispered, "Don't." I raised my empty left hand slowly and kept my right hand near my flashlight, not reaching for anything. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said quietly. He licked his lips. "They're outside." "Yes," I said. "And if we don't handle this, they'll come in anyway." He looked like a border officer, but without the uniform, just a long-sleeved shirt and a duty belt. His badge was clipped to it, U.S. Customs and Border Protection. His face was drawn with exhaustion, but his posture was still trained. "I'm Officer Rojas," he whispered. "They told us to pull back. We were supposed to lock it and leave. I stayed because my partner didn't make it out. He blinked fast, like he was trying not to see something. "Are you alone?" I asked. He nodded. "I've been listening to them out there. They're going to break in." "They won't if we open it in a controlled way," I said. "But if you stay hidden and someone smashes a window, you'll end up in the middle of a riot." His eyes flicked to the hallway behind me. "There's more," he whispered, "in the cells." My skin prickled. "What do you mean?" He swallowed. "2 people. They showed up yesterday. One got bit. We locked them down. Then the radios went crazy and nobody came back. I didn't know what to do. A bitten person." The words landed like a weight. I'd seen enough video by now to know what a bite meant. Whatever the infection was, it spread fast. That was why people were running. That was why hospitals were failing. "Are they still alive?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know. They were when I checked this morning. Then I heard noise, and I stopped going back there." I took a slow breath. "Okay," I said. "Listen to me. We're going to do this in steps. You're going to keep that pistol, but you're going to stop pointing it at me. If you shoot someone who's trying to help, you're going to trigger the very thing you're afraid of." His hands trembled. Slowly, he lowered the gun a few inches. "Good," I said. "Now, we need to establish control before the crowd comes inside. That means we pick a few people outside who will listen, and we create simple rules." He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Who are you?" he asked. "Mason," I said. "Former Army, trainer, I lived nearby." Rojas nodded once, like that category made sense. "Okay," he whispered. "Do you have keys?" I asked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. "Yes." "Good," I said. "That means we don't break anything. That also means you can lock internal doors if we need to." He looked toward the lobby entrance. "If I open it, they'll rush." "Not if we stayed it," I said. "I'm going to step back out through the mechanical door and tell them the building isn't a free-for-all. You stay here. When I give the signal, you open the main entrance, but only after we have people lined up and calm." Rojas frowned. "They won't stay calm." "They will if they're scared enough," I said, "and if not, we'll have to make choices." He didn't like that. Nobody likes that. But he nodded again, because reality doesn't care what you like. I backed away, keeping my movements slow, then returned down the corridor and out through the mechanical door. Outside, the crowd surged a little when they saw me. Hope is a dangerous accelerant. I raised my hands. "There's a border officer inside," I said loudly enough for most to hear. "He has keys. The building is not abandoned. We're opening it in an organized way, or we're not opening it at all." The smugglers pushed forward immediately. Hoodie guy called, "Open it then." "Not like that," I said. "We set rules first. Quiet rules, simple rules. If you can't follow them, you don't go inside." The bad guy laughed. "You gonna stop us?" I looked directly at him. "If you start a fight here, you'll draw them. The infected. They'll come right up this road like it's a guideline. If you don't believe me, keep yelling." As if on cue, a sound drifted from the trees beyond the lot. Distant, uneven, like feet on gravel. It wasn't close, but it was real. The crowd quieted. Tessa stepped beside me, and I was grateful for it. She had the kind of authority that comes from seeing people at their worst and not flinching. "He's right," she said. "I've seen them. They come when there's noise. They don't stop when you tell them to." A man near the front, middle-aged, wearing a mechanic's jacket, said, "So what do we do?" I pointed to the ground in front of the entrance. "We form a line," I said. "Families and injured first. Nobody runs. Nobody pushes. If you have a weapon, It stays down unless you have to defend yourself. Anyone showing signs of infection stays outside. That's not cruelty. That's survival. A woman clutched her baby tighter. "What signs?" she asked, voice shaking. Tessa answered practical. Fever, confusion, aggression, bites. If someone can't follow instructions, they don't come in. Murmurs rose again, but not as sharp. People want rules more than they want freedom when fear is high. Hoodie guy leaned close, low voice. "You're making yourself important." "I'm making this not a massacre," I said. He studied me. "And if I say no?" I didn't answer him directly. I looked past him at the crowd. "If we can't do this calmly," I said loudly, "the doors stay shut and we all figure out our own survival in the parking lot. You can try breaking in, but if you break windows and a horde shows up, you'll have nowhere to run. This canopy is a dead end." A long beat. Then the mechanic jacket man stepped into a rough line formation without being told twice. Others followed. Not perfectly, but enough. Hoodie guy cursed under his breath and stepped back a half pace. He wasn't backing down because he respected me. He was backing down because the crowd's momentum was shifting, and predators hate being outnumbered by intent. I turned slightly and gave Rojas the signal we'd agreed on, a simple, unmistakable wave. A moment later, the main entrance door clicked. It opened inward. Officer Rojas stood there, pale, eyes tired, pistol holstered now but visible. His badge caught the gray light. "Listen up," he said, voice hoarse but authoritative. "This is a federal facility. I am the only officer assigned here right now. This building has secure areas. You will follow instructions or you will be removed. Do you understand?" The crowd murmured assent like schoolchildren. Rojas looked at me. I nodded. He understood. I was his support whether he wanted it or not. "First 10, Rojas said, pointing. "Families with small kids, you come in, you sit, you stay quiet. Everyone else, you wait your turn." People moved. Slowly. The line held. As the first group entered the lobby, I stepped to the side and watched the smugglers. Hoodie guy's eyes were on the door like it was a prize. He would wait, but he would not accept being controlled forever. That was another truth. In a collapse, you don't just fight the infected. You fight the people who see the collapse as permission. Inside, the lobby smelled like old carpet and dust. Rojas guided people to the chairs. Tessa immediately started assessing anyone who looked unwell, her paramedic brain slipping into triage without thinking. I stayed near the entrance, watching the flow. 10 became 20, then 30. The building filled with the sound of breathing, soft crying, whispered arguments. But it stayed quieter than I expected, because fear makes people conserve energy. Rojas leaned close to me at one point. "What now?" he asked, voice low. "We secure internal doors," I whispered back. "We pick a room as a safe area. We establish a watch schedule, we ration water, and we deal with the holding cells before someone finds them." His jaw clenched. "I didn't want—" "I know," I said, "but wanting doesn't matter." We moved together down the hallway toward secondary inspection, away from the crowd. I kept my flashlight beam low to avoid drawing attention. The corridor led to a series of rooms with thick doors and narrow windows, interview rooms, storage, and at the end a section that smelled like disinfectant. The holding area. Rojas stopped outside the first cell door, breathing hard. "Tell me what's inside," I said. He swallowed. 2 people, a man and a woman. They showed up in the night. They weren't locals. They were trying to cross. The woman said her husband had been attacked. He had a bite on his forearm. We locked them in here because we didn't know what else to do. "Did you call for medical?" I asked. "Yes," he said. No one came. I nodded once. Okay, I said. We don't open the door, not yet. We look through the window, we assess. Quietly. Rojas leaned toward the narrow window and then flinched back. I stepped in, careful, and angled my flashlight. The cell was small, concrete floor, bench bolted to the wall. Toilet. In the corner, a woman sat with her knees to her chest, rocking slightly. Her hair was tangled, her eyes flicked toward the light and then away. On the bench lay a man. He was breathing, but it didn't look right. His chest rose in shallow jerks. His arm was bandaged, and the bandage was dark with old seepage. His face was slick with sweat. His mouth worked silently like he was chewing air. The woman looked at the window again, and her gaze locked onto mine. She moved fast, pressing her face close to the glass. Her eyes were wide with fear, not aggression. "Please," she mouthed, and I could hear it faintly through the door. "Please." Rojas' hand trembled on his keyring. I leaned close to the door and spoke quietly, projecting calm. "Ma'am," I said, "can you understand me?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Yes, please. He's getting worse. Please help him." "What's your name?" I asked. "Samira," she said. "My name is Samira. He is my husband, Nabil, please." "Samira," I said, "I'm going to ask you questions. You need to answer honestly. If you lie, you'll get people killed." She nodded rapidly, tears in her eyes. "When was he bitten?" I asked. 2 days, she whispered. "In Montreal, in the street. We ran, we drove. They were attacking." "Has he been violent?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, he is sick, he is hot, he is shaking. He is not himself." "Has he tried to bite you?" I asked, blunt. Her eyes widened at the question. Then she shook her head again. "No, never." I looked at the man on the bench. His jaw worked, his eyes were half open, unfocused, his fingers flexed. Tessa wasn't here, that mattered. If this turned bad, we needed someone who could move fast with medical judgment. I turned to Rojas. "We need Tessa," I whispered. Rojas nodded and hurried back down the corridor. I kept my eye on the cell. Samira pressed her hands to the glass like she could push through it. "Please," she whispered again. I took a slow breath and forced my voice steady. "Samira," I said, "we might not be able to help him. We might only be able to keep you safe." Her face crumpled. "No," she said, shaking her head. "No. Please, he is all I have." I didn't answer that with false hope. Instead, I said, "Sit back from the door. Stay calm. If he changes, if he becomes aggressive, you move away. Understand?" She hesitated, then nodded. I heard footsteps, then Tessa's voice, tight and controlled. "You said cells." Tessa arrived with Rojas. She looked through the window and her face hardened. "That bite," she murmured. "That's the pattern." "You've seen it?" I asked. She nodded once. "In St. Albans, a guy came in with a bite. He was coherent for a while. Then he flipped. Not like a seizure, like a switch." Rojas's face went gray. "What do we do?" Tessa looked at me, and for a moment, the weight of leadership landed on both of us like a physical thing. "We can't bring him out," she said quietly. "Not into a building full of kids." Samira heard the tone through the door and started crying harder. "No," she said. "No, please." Tessa leaned close to the door and spoke gently but firm. "Samira, I'm a medic," she said. "Listen to me. Your husband is very sick. We cannot bring him into the main area. We need to keep others safe." Samira shook her head violently. "Please, please. I will stay. We will stay. Just give water. Medicine." Tessa closed her eyes briefly. Then she looked at me and spoke in a low voice I'll never forget. "If he turns in there," she said, "she'll be trapped." I nodded slowly. "We can move her," I said, "not him. Her." Rojas' hands clenched. "If we open the door..." "We don't open it fully," I said. "We control it. We use the restraint hatch if there is one, or we crack the door with a barrier and we pull her out fast. She comes out alone. We keep distance. We secure the door again." Tessa nodded. "And we check her for bites." Samira's sobs turned to desperate pleading. She didn't understand English perfectly, but she understood the shape of what we were deciding. Rojas brought up the ring of keys and selected one. His breathing was loud in the hallway. "Ready?" I said to Tessa. She nodded, jaw set. "Ready." Rojas inserted the key. The lock clicked. In that moment, Nabil sat up on the bench. His movements were wrong, too quick, too sharp. His head snapped toward the door. His eyes, which had been dull, suddenly fixed on the sound like an animal hearing a feeder open. Samira scrambled backward with a cry. Tessa's hand went to her radio out of habit. Then she remembered it was dead or unreliable. She swallowed and stepped back. Nabil stood. He moved toward the door, shoulders hunched, mouth opening and closing. A low sound came from him, more like a growl than a word. Rojas froze, key still in the lock. "Don't open it," I whispered urgently. "Lock it, now." Rojas fumbled. The key rattled. Nabil hit the door with his shoulder. The metal boomed. Samira screamed. Tessa flinched, then forced herself still. "Samira!" She shouted through the door. "Get to the back corner, now!" Samira stumbled, crying, trying to obey. Nabil hit the door again, harder. Rojas twisted the key back, locking it, and then stumbled backward like the door might explode outward. The hallway filled with the sound. Even through thick walls it was loud. In the distance, I heard voices rising in the lobby. People were reacting. Fear was spreading. I looked at Tessa. "We can't do it now," I said quietly. "Not with the building full of people and that noise." Tessa's face was pale. "Samira." I took a breath, making the decision that would haunt me. "If we open that door, he's coming out," I said. "And then he'll be in the hallway, and then he'll be in the lobby. We can't risk it." Samira was sobbing in the back corner. Nabil was slamming himself against the door like he didn't feel pain. Rojas put his hands to his head. "Oh God," he whispered. "Listen," I said sharply. "We have to reduce noise. We have to secure this corridor. We have to keep the crowd from panicking. Right now." Tessa's eyes were wet. But she nodded, because she understood triage isn't just medicine. It's decisions with no clean outcome. We moved quickly. Rojas locked the hallway door leading back to the lobby, creating a buffer. I posted myself near it while Tessa went to calm the crowd. The lobby was already buzzing. People stood, murmuring, eyes wide. The smugglers were watching everything like they were tracking weaknesses. Tessa climbed up on a chair and raised her voice. Not yelling, but projecting with a professional authority. "Everyone stay seated," she said. "We had a situation in the back. It's contained. Stay calm." Hoodie guy called, "What situation?" Tessa looked him dead in the face. "The kind that gets worse if you start shouting." That shut him up for 2 seconds. Then his friend with the bat muttered something, and they started pushing toward the counters, trying to see. I stepped in front of them, posture relaxed but firm. "Back," I said. Back guy smiled. "Or what?" "Or you become a problem," I said, and kept my voice low. "And problems don't get shelter." Hoodie guy's eyes narrowed. He was calculating whether the crowd would support me or him. That was when an older man, thin, wearing a faded hunting jacket, stood up from the chairs and said, "He's right. Sit down. We don't need you starting anything." A woman chimed in, "We need quiet." The smugglers hesitated. They didn't like being outnumbered by social pressure. Hoodie Guy lifted his hands in mock surrender again. "Fine," he said, "we're calm." But his eyes told me he wasn't done. Over the next hour, we turned the lobby into something like a camp. We used plastic tape from a desk to mark boundaries. A sleeping area on one side, a medical assessment corner where Tessa worked, a quiet zone where children could be kept away from arguments. Rojas found a closet with old blankets, scratchy, thin, but better than nothing. I found the building's water supply in a utility room. There was a tank, but it relied on pressure. Without power, we'd need to be careful. I located the main shutoff and the pipes. I filled every available container while we still had flow. I also found the building's old radio equipment. It was outdated, but some units had backup batteries. I managed to get a faint NOAA weather broadcast on one device and a scratchy local channel on another. Mostly, it was static and distant voices, but it was information. Information is oxygen in a crisis. By evening, the sun dropped early, and the building became a dark box. We used flashlights sparingly. I didn't want the station lit up like a beacon. Outside, we heard things. At first, it was just movement, shuffling, dragging, then occasional moans that rose and fell like wind through a broken pipe. The infected were on the road. They were being funneled toward the border like water down a ditch because people in panic tend to follow the same paths, roads, signs, familiar routes. The inspection station wasn't just shelter. It was a magnet. Rojas sat at the counter, head in his hands. "They're coming," he whispered. "They're already here," I said. Tessa approached me quietly. "We need a plan for the smugglers," she said. "They're watching you. They're going to try something when people sleep." I nodded. "We set a watch schedule," I said. "We keep the officer visible. We keep them from controlling supplies." "And the woman in the cell?" she asked softly. I looked down the hallway door, beyond which Samira was trapped with her turning husband. The sounds had lessened, but not stopped. "We haven't forgotten her," I said. "We just need the right moment." Tessa's eyes searched mine. The right moment might never come. "I know," I said. That night, I organized a watch. Not everyone wanted to help. Some were too scared, some were too selfish. But enough people understood that security wasn't magic. It was work. The older man in the hunting jacket introduced himself as Gary Pelletier, retired from the Vermont State Police. His shoulders were stiff, but his eyes were clear. He had a revolver and a calm presence that made people listen. A younger guy, maybe 20, named Eli, said he'd been in the National Guard for a year before quitting. He looked embarrassed to admit it, like it wasn't enough, but he volunteered for watch anyway. A woman named Marlene, who ran a small trucking dispatch office in Newport, offered to help with organization. She took to ration lists and head counts like she'd been born for it. And there was Colin, my neighbor, who somehow had made it here and now looked like a haunted version of himself. He clung to the idea that I knew what to do, like it was a rope. We placed people at the main entrance, at the back corridor door, and near the secondary inspection bay. We used chairs as barriers and kept lights low. Around midnight, when most people had finally settled into uneasy sleep, I heard a soft sound near the side of the lobby. A door opening slowly. I moved without thinking, crossing the room in silence, flashlight off. I saw a shape slipping through an internal doorway toward the offices. Hoodie Guy. I followed at a distance, keeping my breath quiet. He moved like someone familiar with sneaking. Careful steps, hand on the wall, listening for others. He entered an office area where file cabinets sat like tombstones. He pulled drawers open softly, rummaging. Looking for what? Keys? Weapons? Paperwork? Cash? In a collapse, people still chase the old currencies until they learn they're worthless. I stepped into the doorway behind him. "Stop," I said quietly. He froze, then slowly turned. In the dim light, his face wasn't scary, it was just hard. He had the look of someone who'd spent his life learning which rules could be broken and which ones couldn't. "You following me?" he whispered. "I'm stopping you," I said. He smiled again, small. "Stopping me from what? Looking?" "You don't get to loot the place while families sleep," I said. He lifted his hands slightly. "We're all surviving." "You're harvesting," I said. "There's a difference." His eyes narrowed. "You think you're better because you talk nice?" "I think you're going to get people hurt," I said. He shifted his weight, and I saw the outline of the handgun under his hoodie. "Careful," he whispered. "You don't want a loud problem." I nodded slightly. "You're right," I said. "I don't." Then I heard another sound behind me. Soft footsteps. Gary Pelletier appeared in the doorway, revolver low but ready. His voice was gravel. "Put your hands where I can see them." Hoodie guy's smile faded. For a moment, the air was full of decisions. Hoodie guy looked from me to Gary and then back, calculating. His friends weren't here. The crowd wasn't here. It was just him against two men who weren't bluffing. He raised his hand slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay, I'm just looking." Gary stepped closer. "You're done looking," he said. "You go back to the lobby. You stay where people can see you. If I catch you sneaking again, you're out." Hoodie guy's eyes flashed with anger. "Out where?" he hissed. "Out there?" Gary didn't flinch. "Out where your choices put you," he said. Hoodie guy stared for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine," he said, and walked past us, shoulders stiff. When he was gone, Gary looked at me. "You were right," he murmured. "Predators. They're not the worst kind," I said quietly. Gary's brow furrowed. "What's worse?" "The kind that smiles while they do it," I said, "and the kind that thinks they're saving you." We returned to the lobby and pretended nothing had happened, but I knew it had. Lines had been drawn. At around 3 a.m, the infected hit the perimeter. It started with a thump against the front door, then another. A low moan rose outside, followed by a scraping sound as hands dragged along the glass. People woke, panic flaring like dry grass. Someone screamed. A child cried. I stepped up on a counter, voice cutting through the chaos. "Quiet!" I hissed, not yelling, but sharp. "Everyone stay down, lights off." Tessa moved through the crowd, touching shoulders, calming, doing what paramedics do in disasters, turning panic into tasks. Rojas went to the front entrance and looked through the side window. His face tightened. "There's a lot," he whispered. "How many?" I asked. He swallowed. "More than 10. Gary came to my side. "They're attracted to sound," he said, like confirming. "Yes," I said, "and light, and movement." We waited, holding our breath as the infected pressed against the doors and windows. The building's glass shuddered but held. These weren't superhuman creatures. They were people with broken instincts. They didn't coordinate. They just pushed because something inside them wanted inside. After several minutes, the sounds shifted. One of them stumbled away. Another followed. The group's moaning drifted down the road like a tide receding. The lobby exhaled. But nobody went back to sleep, not really. That was when I realized the inspection station was not a long-term shelter. It was a checkpoint in a flood. By morning, the lot outside was littered with footprints, smears on glass, and a few abandoned backpacks from people who'd tried to camp outside and fled. We found one body near a barrier, someone who hadn't made it. We didn't talk about it loudly, we didn't need to. Tessa pulled me aside near the break room. "We can't keep everyone here," she said softly. "Supplies won't last, and those things will keep coming." "I know," I said. She hesitated. "Then what?" I looked at the map I'd taped to the wall, marked with routes and landmarks. "We move in stages," I said. "We pick a safer place with water, defensible features, and distance from major roads." "Where?" she asked. I thought about it. The irony was bitter. In a collapse, the best shelters are often the boring infrastructure places nobody notices. Water treatment plants, maintenance depots, service tunnels, places built for function, not comfort. "There's an old state maintenance yard a few miles south," I said. "Fenced, heavy equipment, fuel tanks. It's not perfect, but it's better than a magnet on the border." Tessa nodded slowly. "And what about Samira?" The question landed again like a stone. I looked down the hallway door. The sounds from the cell had become intermittent, thumps, then quiet, then another thump. Rojas was in the lobby, eyes hollow, avoiding looking at that corridor like it was a mirror. "We go back there," I said. "We do it now, while the infected are quieter." Tessa's face tightened. "Okay," she whispered. We gathered the smallest team we could without drawing attention. Me, Tessa, Rojas, and Gary. Eli insisted on coming too, wanting to prove himself. I didn't like it, but I knew refusing him might make him reckless later. We approached the corridor door and unlocked it. The hallway beyond smelled the same, but the air felt heavier. As we neared the cell, we heard Samira's voice, hoarse, pleading. "Please," she whispered. "Please." Rojas flinched like he'd been hit. I leaned close to the door. "Samira," I said quietly. "It's Mason. Are you okay?" A pause. Then her voice trembling. He is not my husband anymore," she whispered. "He is hurting himself. He keeps hitting the door. He does not stop. I am scared." I swallowed. "Are you bitten?" I asked. "No," she said quickly. "No, I swear." Tessa leaned in. "Samira," she said gently, "we are going to get you out. You need to do exactly what we say. Can you do that?" "Yes," Samira whispered. I looked at the door. No hatch, no easy way. We'd have to crack it. Gary positioned himself to the side with his revolver. Eli stood behind with a crowbar, nervous sweat on his face. Rojas had his pistol out now, hands shaking. Tessa looked at me. "If he comes out," she began. "We stop him," I said. I didn't say how, we all knew. I spoke through the door one more time. "Samira," I said, "when the door opens, you move fast. You come straight to us. Do not look at him. Do not go back for anything. Understand?" A strangled sob. "Yes," she whispered. Rojas inserted the key. His hand trembled so badly the metal rattled. "Ready," I said, and planted my feet. Rojas unlocked. I reached for the handle. From inside, a low growl rose immediately, like the sound had become a trigger. I pulled the door open 2 inches, using my boot as a wedge. Nabil slammed into it instantly, shoulder driving, mouth snapping. The gap widened a fraction, then held. Samira appeared in the gap, face streaked with tears, moving like a terrified animal. "Now," I hissed. She squeezed through, scraping her shoulder on the metal, and stumbled into the hallway. Tessa grabbed her and yanked her back, away from the door. Nabil shoved again, trying to force the gap wider. His hands clawed at the opening. Gary raised his revolver. eyes cold. Rojas's pistol rose too, and I saw his finger tighten. I shoved the door closed hard, slamming it into Nabil's body. The impact echoed. Nabil hit the door again immediately, relentless. Rojas locked it, hands fumbling, then stumbled back like he might vomit. Samira collapsed against the wall, sobbing. Tessa held her, checking her neck and arms for bites, moving with clinical focus even while her eyes were wet. "She's clean," Tessa whispered finally. Samira's sobs turned into words in broken English. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you. I am sorry. I am sorry." I looked at the door, listening to the thumps inside. It wasn't a person in there anymore, not in any meaningful sense. Rojas stared at it too, face twisted with guilt. "I left him," he whispered. "I locked him. You did what you could," I said quietly. It wasn't comfort, it was fact. Gary's voice was low. "What now?" I didn't answer immediately, because now was the part of the story nobody wants, the part that sticks to you. Instead I said, "We secure the corridor, we keep that door locked, and we move people out of this building as soon as possible." Tessa looked at me. "He'll keep making noise," she said softly. "It will draw them." I nodded once. "I know." We escorted Samira back to the lobby. People stared at her, curiosity and fear mixing. Some looked away, as if avoiding her would keep infection from touching them. Hoodie guy watched her too, eyes sharp. He whispered something to his bat friend and they both smiled. I felt my stomach tighten again. By noon, the station was under pressure from 3 sides. Infected drifting in from the roads, desperate travelers arriving because they'd heard rumors of shelter, and predators inside who were getting impatient. The tipping point came in the afternoon, when a pickup truck roared into the lot with its horn blaring. The horn. That one sound was like throwing blood into water. People rushed to the windows. Someone shouted. Children started crying again. Outside, I saw infected shapes in the tree line turn as if on a string and begin moving toward the canopy. The pickup's driver jumped out yelling, "Open up! Let us in!" Behind him, 3 more people spilled out, frantic, carrying bags. Rojas moved toward the door, conflicted. "We can't," he started. I grabbed his arm. "If we open the door right now, we flood the building with panic and noise," I said, "and those things are already coming." Tessa looked out and whispered, "They're too close." The pickup driver pounded on the glass. "Please," he shouted, "my sister's hurt." The crowd inside surged, empathy fighting fear. Hoodie guy stepped forward, voice loud enough to carry. "Open the door," he said. "You can't leave them." And there it was, the predator wearing morality like a mask. I stepped in front of him. "Not like this," I said. "We don't open while they're coming." Hoodie guy's eyes narrowed. "So you decide who lives." "I'm deciding who doesn't die," I said, and kept my voice steady. "We can help them without opening wide." Gary moved beside me. "We can use the secondary bay," he murmured. "Sally port, bring them into the enclosed area, then close the outer gate." That was why infrastructure matters. 2-door systems. Controlled entry. The building had been designed for this. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "Rojas, can you open the secondary bay from inside?" Rojas blinked, then nodded, snapping into professional mode for the first time in hours. "Yes," he said. "This way." We moved fast. Tessa grabbed a first aid bag. Eli helped move a heavy chair barrier. Rojas unlocked the internal door to the secondary inspection bay, a large enclosed space with a heavy outer gate and concrete walls. It smelled like old exhaust and rubber. He hit a manual release and cranked the outer gate open just enough to let people in, not enough to invite a stampede. I stepped outside into the bay, keeping my body between the opening and the lobby. The cold air hit my face like a slap. The pickup driver saw me and ran toward the gap, dragging a woman with him. She limped, face pale, holding her side. The other passengers followed, eyes wild. "Quiet," I hissed. "No yelling. Move." They stumbled inside. I slammed the gate shut behind them with Eli's help. Outside, the infected were closer now, moving in clumps, drawn by the horn and the shouting. They weren't sprinting. They didn't need to. Panic brings you to them. Inside the bay, the injured woman sagged against the wall. Tessa immediately knelt, checking her. "What happened?" Tessa asked. The pickup driver's voice was ragged. "We got attacked on the road," he said. "She fell. She hit something. She's bleeding." Tessa's hands moved, efficient. "Lift your shirt," she said. The woman hesitated, then obeyed. It wasn't a bite. It was a deep cut from a fall. Ugly, but manageable. Tessa exhaled. I felt a fraction of relief, then heard pounding on the outer gate. The infected had reached us. Hands slapped metal. A moan rose, low and hungry. The new arrivals froze, eyes huge. "Stay back," I said sharply, pointing them away from the gate. "Stay quiet." The pounding continued. Then, above the moans, came another sound. A hard, deliberate oodar, like a fist on metal from a human with intent. I turned, heart hammering. The gate rattled again, not from mindless pushing, but from someone testing it. I heard a voice outside, low and familiar. Hoodie guy. He'd slipped out through another door while we were distracted. And he wasn't alone. I saw his bat friend's shadow through the gap near the gate hinge. Predators don't wait for permission. They exploit moments when good people are busy doing good. Hoodie guy's voice carried through the metal. "Open up," he said. "You let them in, you let us in too." I felt my blood run cold. Because now we had two threats at once. The infected pressing from outside and the smugglers trying to force entry from within our own perimeter. I looked at Eli. His face was pale. His crowbar shook in his hands. Gary stepped forward. Revolver raised now, voice like steel. "Back off," he said, loud enough to carry through the gate. "Right now." Hoodie guy laughed. "You gonna shoot through the gate, Grandpa?" Gary didn't answer with words. He answered by cocking the revolver. Silence for half a heartbeat. Then Hoodie guy's voice dropped, all friendliness gone. "This is how it works now," he said. "No more rules." The infected slammed the gate again, harder, as if reacting to the tension. The metal vibrated. The moaning grew louder. Tessa looked up from the injured woman, eyes sharp. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "This bay will turn into a trap." She was right. The Sallyport was a buffer, not a fortress. I made the decision in a second because that's what collapse forces you to do. "We move," I said. "Now, everyone through the inner door, quiet, fast." Rojas opened the inner door from inside, eyes frantic. I ushered the new arrivals through first, then Tessa with the injured woman. Gary covered with his revolver. As Eli moved to follow, Hoodie guy shouted, "You can't keep us out." I slammed the inner door and locked it. Rojas engaged a deadbolt. The corridor sealed. Outside, the bay became a metal box full of moans and fists and anger. Inside the lobby, people stared at us, confused. "What happened?" someone whispered. I didn't sugarcoat it. "Those men tried to force their way in through the bay," I said. "We're out of time here." The room murmured, fear rising. Tessa stood, voice clear. "Listen," she said. "This building is not safe long term. We're going to move in a controlled group to a better location. If you want to survive, you follow instructions." Hoodie Guy's friends, 2 of them still in the lobby, stood up fast, anger on their faces. "You locked him out?" one barked. "Yes," I said, and met his gaze, "because he chose to threaten us." The man's jaw clenched. He looked like he might lunge. Gary stepped forward, revolver visible. "Sit down," he said, "or leave." The lobby held its breath. Then, to my surprise, Marlene the dispatcher stepped into the space between us and spoke with calm authority. "We are moving," she said. "If you want to come, you follow the plan. If you don't, you stay. But you don't sabotage everyone else." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. It carried the weight of someone used to coordinating chaos. People nodded. The crowd's momentum shifted again. The smugglers realized they were losing the room. That's when they did what desperate predators do. They went for the officer. One of them surged toward Rojas, grabbing at his duty belt, trying to yank keys. Rojas shouted, stumbling. The lobby erupted. I moved without thinking, hand shooting out, grabbing the attacker's wrist, twisting and using leverage the way I'd taught 100 times. The man yelped, grip loosening. Gary stepped in, revolver aimed, voice like thunder. "Stop!" The attacker froze, eyes wide. Tessa shouted, "Everyone down!" Children screamed. Adults pressed back, panic surging. I forced the attacker away and shoved him toward the floor. "Back off," I said, through clenched teeth. The man's eyes flicked to my concealed handgun under my jacket, and something in him recalculated. He raised his hands, breathing hard. The other smuggler in the lobby backed away slowly, hands up. "We're done," he said quickly. "We're done." Rojas was shaking, but he clutched his keyring like it was life itself. I looked at him. "Can you do this?" I asked softly. Rojas swallowed, then nodded once. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes." That was the moment the inspection station stopped being a shelter and became what it had always been designed to be, a controlled point of movement. We didn't stay to debate ethics. We didn't stay to mourn the choices we were making. We turned the lobby into a staging area. Marlene took names and grouped people, families, singles, injured. Tessa assigned helpers to carry supplies. Gary and Eli organized a simple security formation. People with weapons at the edges, people without in the center. I marked a route on the wall map, south along back roads, avoiding the main highway. I chose a destination I knew had fences and heavy equipment and a chance. Before we left, I did one last thing. I walked down the corridor to the holding cell door. The thumping had become steady, like a heartbeat. I leaned close and spoke softly, though I knew the man inside was gone. "I'm sorry," I said. Not for him, but for Samira, for Rojas, for the part of me that still wanted to believe in clean endings. Then I walked away and locked the corridor door behind me. We moved out at dusk, through the rear service exit, using the trees as cover rather than marching down the road like a parade. The inspection station, once a symbol of order, stood behind us in the dark, surrounded by moans and shadows. As we walked, I heard the infected at the station grow louder, drawn to the building we were abandoning. And somewhere behind that noise, faint but real, I heard the metal bay gate rattle again, hard, deliberate, like someone was still testing it, still angry, still alive. Hoodie Guy hadn't died back there. He'd been locked out. That meant he would follow. Collapse doesn't end when you leave the danger. It follows you, step by step, carried by people who refuse to accept boundaries. We moved through the woods with only moonlight and occasional flashlight beams pointed at the ground. Leaves crunched underfoot and every sound felt too loud. The group stretched out, people breathing hard, children being carried, fear held in tight fists. I walked near the front with Gary and Eli, scanning. Tessa stayed near the center, checking the injured and keeping Samira close. Rojas walked like a man carrying invisible weight. The maintenance yard was only a few miles, but in a world where every sound could summon death, it felt like crossing a continent. Halfway there, we heard movement behind us. Not the shuffling of infected. Footsteps. Controlled, quiet, human. I stopped and raised my hand, signaling the group to freeze. Everyone held still, breath fogging in the cold air. In the darkness behind us, between trees, a figure moved. Then another. Then a third. I felt my stomach drop. Hoodie Guy's people. They'd found a way out of the station's bay, or they'd never been fully trapped. Either way, they were here, shadowing the group like wolves. Gary's voice was low. What do we do? I took a breath and made the choice I'd been avoiding since the beginning. Choice between invisibility and intervention. We don't run, I whispered. If we run, we scatter. If we scatter, the infected find the weak. Eli's voice trembled. So, we fight them? No, I said. We show them we're not prey. I turned and stepped slightly off the trail, raising my flashlight and clicking it on for a second. Beam pointed at the ground near the shadows, not blinding, just enough to announce awareness. Stop following, I called quietly, voice carrying but not shouting. The shadows froze. Hoodie Guy stepped forward into faint moonlight, hands out slightly like he was negotiating. His face was calm again, like he hadn't threatened anyone at all. You lock me out, he said, voice soft. Then you march off with everyone. That's cold. You tried to take the building, I said. You tried to take the keys. You made your choice. He smiled. I made a choice to survive. So did we, I said. He looked past me at the line of people. Families, kids injured. His eyes were hungry in a different way than the infected. You can't protect them forever, he said. You know that. Maybe not, I said, but I can protect them tonight. He took a step closer. Let us join then, he said. We bring skills, we bring muscle. You bring risk, I said, and you know it. His smile faded. Then you'll have a problem. I nodded once. Yes, I said, we will. Gary shifted beside me, revolver low but visible. Eli's grip tightened on his crowbar. In the line behind, I heard a child whimper, then be hushed. Hoodie Guy's eyes flicked to Gary's gun, then to the group, calculating again. He wasn't suicidal. Predators rarely are. He lifted his hand slightly. All right, he said. We'll keep our distance. You do that, I said, and if you come closer again, we won't talk. He stared at me a long moment, then stepped back into the shadows. They melted away into the trees, not gone, but repositioning. The group started moving again, but the fear had shifted. It wasn't just fear of the infected anymore. It was fear of being hunted by people who understood tactics. When we reached the maintenance yard, it looked like salvation and a trap at the same time. A chain-link fence topped with barbed wire, a locked gate, several large salt sheds, a garage bay for plows, a row of heavy trucks, fuel tanks with faded warning labels, a small office building with a flat roof. I knew enough about places like this to see the assets: metal, tools, fuel, barriers, visibility. I also saw the weaknesses. Big open yard, lots of hiding places, more doors than you can watch. We got inside by cutting the chain on a service gate with bolt cutters I'd brought. I hated making that sound, but we had no time. We moved people into the garage bay first, closing the big door behind us and locking it from inside. The air smelled like oil and rubber. It was cold, but it was enclosed. Tessa set up a medical corner. Marlene started counting supplies and assigning people to tasks. Rojas sat against a wall, staring at nothing. I walked the perimeter with Gary, checking fences, gates, lines of sight. We found a ladder to the office roof and climbed up to look around. From up there, I could see the dark line of the road we'd come from, and beyond it, the faint glow of the inspection station area like a distant bruise. I also saw movement in the trees near the road. Not infected. Human silhouettes watching. Hoodie guy had followed, he'd kept his distance, but he was here. Gary looked at me, eyes hard. "This isn't over," he said. "No," I said, "it's starting." And as the night settled over the yard with a group of exhausted strangers sleeping in a garage full of machines, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. The closed border inspection station had been easy compared to this. The station was a building designed to control movement. The maintenance yard was a place designed to support movement. That meant it had resources, and that meant it would attract everyone who needed resources, including the infected, including desperate families, including predators. The world wasn't ending in one dramatic moment. It was unraveling in stages. Borders had closed. Rules had dissolved. People were funneled toward choke points like water, and wherever the funnel narrowed, pressure built until something broke. We were standing in the next narrow point, and the decisions I made here, who to trust, who to turn away, who to confront, would decide whether any of us saw another week. I leaned on the cold metal roof edge, looking out into the dark, listening to the distant sounds of the new world. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed once and then died. And in the woods below, a branch snapped, soft, deliberate, like a footstep choosing where to land. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the borderline on my map and understood finally what it really was now. Not a line between countries. A line between what we used to be and what we were becoming. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.